We Jews have been a revolutionary people. We can be a revolutionary people again. We may struggle to believe it. We may have to wrestle with the hope and the longing. But wrestling with God has always been our namesake.
We can exist in greater coalition with each other when we understand that we are interdependent on each other, that it is knowing truly that what happens to you on a deep level happens to me is what allows for us working together and knowing that my freedom and your freedom are inseparable.
About the richness that you could take in life if you were able to experience a huge range of Jewish cultures. Think about the richness if you looked at your source of power as right here where you are instead of somewhere across the sea that made you uncomfortable and that you were angry at and that you couldn't fully identify with. Like,
The kind of culture shifts our times demand don't happen in the abstract. And although they can have massive impact, they don't get birthed on the big stages. They happen in small, intimate spaces where people go deep. So let's go deep.
Kosi Revaya Kosi Revaya Kosi.
What dreams? I would love to see a Judaism that is way more earth-based. I'd like to see a Judaism that is really embraces both being a diaspora Judaism and actually be like post-diaspora. There is no such thing as a diaspora. We are where we are. It's not that we're scattered. We are where we need to be and we belong to be. And in doing that, we embrace the earth where we are.
I was thinking about Tisha B'Av, about our ongoing mourning of the destruction of a temple that was central to a particular phase of Judaism, and I had an image of a milkweed pod bursting open and its seeds scattering to the wind, landing in other fields, rooting in new places. The destruction of the temple forced a particular kind of growth and expansion for Jews. Most people on earth have experienced war, exile, forced migration, destruction. I want our histories as Jews to be our seedbeds of solidarity, to bring us into closer and closer kinship with all the peoples of the world so that together we can seize the power of this moment in human history.
I think a lot about what it means to build a Judaism beyond Zionism, and that really is where my hope for what the future can be for the Jewish world is. I think that Zionism and the State of Israel and making that the center holds us back on is a full acceptance of the total, I hate to use the word diaspora, but the entire rest of the Jewish world, celebrating Jews wherever they are, celebrating vast differences in the Jewish world, not giving over power to any one group, but allowing lots and lots of groups to flourish.
You asked me about the Jewishness I dream of, and what came to mind were some lines from a Yom Kippur sermon I wrote a few years ago. That if we are to live courageously, we need to imagine in rich detail the biggest, most delicious, satisfying, inclusive future that we can. A great flowering of human potential and well-being. Project our hearts and minds into that future and then spend our lives walking toward it. But in order for that dream to be accurate, to burn bright enough for navigation, it needs to be rooted in the reality of here and now, all of it, including the terrible. This is how we turn trauma into light. Trauma is not the opposite of joy, it's the husking of its seed. I want a Jewishness that turns trauma into light, a seed that pushes through that husk, that celebrates our survival and all the beauty and wisdom and smartness of the cultures we've created, and mourns our losses without becoming anchored in a story of unique victimization.
For me, a Judaism of our future understands trauma and understands how essentially all Jews have been traumatized. Most people in the world have been traumatized. But a Judaism that understands what it means to have been a traumatized people and to get us past our historical oppression that we have internalized is a Judaism that affirms each of us as a whole being is an important part of what Judaism of the future is, and that's also essential in us being part of larger social justice movements.
It's really important that we look at anti-Semitism, but not just. It's also important that we look at Islamophobia, and it's also important that we look at racism, and it's also important that we look at discrimination in so many different forms. And when we can do that as Jews, then we're part of the collective liberation of all people, and then we can really make a difference.
One day, soon, we will take up our rightful place alongside others in the movements for the liberation of all people. We will listen and hear the sound of the shofar ringing in our ears, Shema Yisrael, and we will answer. We will embody a tradition that seeks, that questions, that longs, that acts. The same tradition that fueled our ancestors to topple pharaohs and czars and laws that denied people their life and humanity.
I dream of a Jewishness that abandons all allegiance to whiteness, to a Eurocentric, settler colonial definition of who Jews are that mimics the worldviews of the very people who oppressed us, that is rooted in every part of our global history, that recognizes and celebrates the real richness of our variety, and from those roots rises into a wholehearted, joyful, fierce commitment to the biggest possible vision of human creation. Let that be our daily prayer. Let that be our practice. Let that be our name of the world.
I dream of a day when Sephardi Jews can be fully celebrated right here, when Mizrahi Jews, Jews from Northern Africa, can be fully celebrated right here, when all Jews of color can be fully celebrated, and when we don't understand Jewish as white. All of this is a possibility for a Jewish future if we let go of those things that are kind of a stranglehold on our vision now, and let us keep pushing and pushing and pushing to move ahead.
We need communities to do this work within. Homes like Kadima that allow us to question and wrestle and build the muscle memory we need to bring our love to scale. Homes like Kadima that give us strength to forge ahead, that offer comfort when the work becomes too difficult and we become weak. When we need to remember the living presence connecting us all, so that not one of us is ever left behind. Humbly, we bring our strength and our love. Humbly, we will join with the strength and love of others. And together, we will be part of a great turning.
Kosi